Hey everyone, today we're going to be looking at how to animate a user interface design from Sketch or XD using the Adobe After Effects application. Let's get started. So to start off with, we're in Sketch. You can see I've got my UI design here. I've put it onto some concentric circles just to give me something nice and interesting as a background. And over on the left hand side, I've got all of my layers. Hopefully you'll notice they're super neat. This is not something that I'm used to doing. I'm pretty messy with my sketch files, but here it's really important. We're going to need to strip back those layers we don't need because we don't want them appearing in our final After Effects compositions. Next up, we've got to move across to XD, and from there we're going to export this into After Effects. So all you need to do is simply open up XD and then open up your sketch file, and XD will take care of the rest. Now we're in XD, I can see that Adobe has managed to bring across all my layers that I had in my sketch file. I haven't noticed anything missing here. I'm just doing a quick glance through to make sure that everything is as expected. The only thing I think that could have been a bit better is my drop shadows. So on the card, I had a multi-layer drop shadow just to give me that really nice smooth curve. Unfortunately, XD only supports one level of drop shadow, so it hasn't brought that with me. It's not too much of a deal. I can always add that in After Effects later if I feel it's necessary. So next, I'm going to get this into my After Effects. I'm going to get it to create a composition, a layered composition, so we can begin animating. All I need to do here is simply go up to File, hit Export, and then Export to After Effects. Make sure that you have your artboard selected so that you bring everything in one go. Awesome, that worked perfectly. You can see here I've got my layered composition. It's centered my piece of UI in the preview screen, you can see here. The only thing it hasn't brought in is my background. That was my bad. I set my artboard to have a background of its own instead of using a background layer. Obviously that hasn't been carried across, but it's super easy to rectify. All I'm going to do is go Layer, New, Solid. You can see here that I've pre-selected my color, but you can select a new color here, hit OK, OK again. It's dropped that at the top of my layer list, so I'm just going to drag that all the way down. Perfect. The only other thing to note here is that my artboard in Sketch and XD was 1920 by 1080. If I go up to composition settings, you can see that it's pre-configured to 1920 by 1080. First of all, I just want to make this a 4K composition. So the easiest way to do that is to create a new composition, select 4K from your preset list, hit enter, and then drag in the profile feature. I'm just going to center that squarely on the screen. Alright, now you'll notice here that it's obviously only taking up half the space because the composition is only half the size. It's really easy to solve, so I'm just going to select the layer here, I'm going to hit the S key, and I'm going to scale this up to 200%. Obviously here, it's not going to be as crisp and as clean because we are literally pulling and doubling the size of that artboard. However, Adobe After Effects gives us a really nice, neat little trick. So if I hit the toggle switches button and then select collapse transformations, which is indicated by this tiny sort of crosshairs icon, what it's going to do is show me the underneath. It's going to treat it as a vector and it's going to stretch it all the way out. Perfect, nice and crisp. So I'm going to jump back into here and we're going to get started doing the animations. The first thing I want to take a look at is the concentric circles around the outside. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn off these top 3 layers. There we go. Perfect. Now what I want to happen is for the concentric circles to kind of spread out and to tween in. So I'm going to select all of them. I'm going to hit the S key and that's going to bring up my scale transformation properties. Hitting the stopwatch is going to allow me to keyframe. So if I just zoom in a little bit on my timeline, you can use this little dial here at the bottom to do that. I can scrub forward 2 seconds or so. Actually, I tell you what, I'm going to do 6 seconds. I'm going to make this a really nice ease. And I'm just going to hit another keyframe in here. You can see it's doing it for all 3 because I have all 3 selected. I'll jump back to the beginning and I'm going to make this maybe 40% of the size. So if I just run this one, you can see it's just getting slightly larger over 6 seconds, nice and slow. It's a little bit boring though, it's a little bit too linear for my liking. What I can do is simply select, I'll tell you what, I'll do it with the top one first and we can copy it onto those other layers. I'm going to select this button here, so this is the graph button. And coming up onto my graph view, I can see that this is the speed of the animation over the time on the x-axis. So I'm just going to select this first point and pull that right up to maybe 100. What I want to happen is for the animation to kind of start off really quick and then slow right down towards the end. This is going to take a little bit of getting right. You don't want it to go beneath the 0 line because it's going to start reversing your animation. Basically, it can't go too quickly because if it goes too quickly over too long a period of time, it's going to already complete its animation before it hits that second keyframe. So just be very careful how you adjust this setting. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm just going to back out of here. I'm going to navigate back to that first keyframe. I've selected them and I'm just going to do Control-C to copy. Come and get rid of these ones and I'm going to paste it onto these. So when I play this now, they'll all scale out together and they'll slow down really nicely. What I want to do now is just stagger them and also fade them in. So first of all, we'll do the fade. I'll select all of them again and hit the T key. I assume T is for transparency. I don't know what else it would mean. It should be O for opacity, but presumably that's already mapped to another function. So again, I've just created 2 keyframes there. I'll jump back to the first one and zero that out. So over the first 2 seconds, it's going to animate that in. Look, that's already looking pretty nice. I think the only thing we could do to really improve on this would be to stagger how those concentric circles come out. They're in multiple layers, so it seems a waste not to. So what I'm going to do is take the middle one and I'm just going to pull this forward maybe to like a second, and then I'm going to grab the other one and pull that forward to maybe around about 2 seconds. So if I play that back now, you can see that the concentric circles animate in at different times. We get a really lovely smooth animation and they continue to animate throughout the duration of this piece. To animate the profile, we first need to enable those layers again. So I'm just going to switch them back on so we can see them. Scrubbing forward a little bit, you can see how the concentric circles behind will animate in, looking pretty nice. And what I want to do is basically have the text, all that metadata animating really nicely in the card, and then have the card animate in itself. So what we're going to do first of all, we'll do this a bit back to front. We're going to dive into the profile itself. We group this in Sketch and XD, and it's created a separate composition for that group, which is super, super helpful. So again, you can look in here and you can see that we've got the title, the name, we've got the star up here. I'm just going to move that down so that they're aligned. And then we have this kind of group up in the top right hand corner for available. There's a background mask, there is the available composition, because remember that was a group, and then there is the group itself in After Effects. Remember I said it was a little bit different? This is why. It shows the group as a separate layer, so if I was to move the group, everything else would move with it. Doesn't handle opacity though, just keep that one in mind. I'm going to turn those off for now so we can concentrate on this left hand side. And what we're going to do is just grab the star, the title and the name. I'll tell you what, let's take the avatar as well. And first of all, I'm just going to hit the T key, and that's going to bring up that opacity setting. I'm going to hit the stopwatch, that's going to allow me to do those keyframes and scrub forward. Probably, I'm going to say maybe about a second, because we don't want these animations to be too long. Jump back to my first one and zero that out. Perfect, nice and easy. The next thing we want to do is change the positioning of those as well. So with them all still selected, I'm going to hit the P key. You can also expand out all the transformations by using the little chevron, but there is a lot, and if you're editing a number of layers in one go, it gets a little bit tricky. So hitting the P key there, I'm going to enable keyframes, scrub forward, probably a little bit longer, say maybe 2 seconds. We can always change this. And then hit another keyframe, jump back to my first one, and I'm just going to bring this is an X and a Y value, so I'm just going to bring the Y value down just a little bit. If you have multiple ones selected, it's going to move that Y value relative to their starting position. So I've just brought that right down. I'm just going to hit play there. You can see that comes up. It's a little bit slow, but again, what we can do is we can highlight all of these keyframes, right click, keyframe velocity, and then apply a bit of an easing to them. So I'm going to show you another trick. In the first one, we use the graph manipulator to start off really quickly and then smooth out to a slow finish. Here, what we're going to do is start off with 0 speed and finish with 0 speed, but ramp up the influence. And what that's going to do, if you imagine like a bell curve, it's going to make that bell really narrow and really tall, so the speed all happens in the middle, and you get these really nice snappy animations with that. Perfect. The only thing here is that we're going to have to sort of tweak our opacity a little bit, because at the beginning bit it's a little bit slow. Maybe we want our opacity here. So if I just hit that T key, I'm just going to grab all of these and move them along to my timeline marker. Nice. Alright, that looks pretty cool. And just like with the concentric circles, I'm going to stagger this animation slightly. I want my avatar coming in first, so I'll just move that to the top so we can see it. I want the title, the name coming in just after that, so I'll just move that forward a little bit. The star probably just a little bit after that because it sits alongside that name. And then finally the title. So over the course of maybe like 4 seconds, you can see how this all pops in, which is pretty nice. Pull that back a little bit. That final one's just a little bit slow. If you're finding that it's a little bit too fiddly to get the timings right, you can always zoom in on your timeline just to get a little bit more fidelity. Sometimes if you're doing short animations, it's much easier to do that. Nice. Okay, great. And finally, I'm going to turn on the available at the top. Fantastic. So I'm going to show you a bit of a trick with available. If I just show you what these layers are doing here, the background mask is obviously that sort of pill background that we've got around the back of it. There we go. And then the available composition here is the text. So what I'm going to use a function called track matte, and I'll show you exactly what that's going to do. Track matte is basically going to allow me to pull down this text and have it appear as it appears into the pill and be masked by that pill shape. In order to do that, what I need to do is take the background, I'm going to duplicate it, drag that one above available, and just hide it away. I'm just going to change the name of that to be TM, so I know it's a track matte. And then I'm going to come down here to my toggle switches. I'll hit that and I'll select track matte. It's going to look at what's above it and track matte it to that. So if I just move that down, you see how it disappears, which is absolutely perfect. So what I want to do next is I'm going to do the position here. So say for instance we want it to come in about here. I'll hit position keyframe there and I'll move it along and do another one. Jump back to my first one and then pull it down off screen. We can see here that this is tracking available, which is here. So what's going to happen is as I move that available group, everything's going to move. The new track matte mask that I've created, the text and the existing mask. So finally what I can do is take this available group, hit the position key there, and I'll go to about here, and I'm just going to hit a position marker there, move that forward, hit another one, jump back to my first one, pull that down a little bit, and run that animation. It's a little bit slow, so I'm gonna fiddle with this for a second. Alright, great, so I've sped that animation up and I've also added some easing, that 80-80 method that I showed you a minute ago. I've added that to both the available group and to the text as well. So when I run this animation, it's going to jump up and it's also going to bring in that text as well. So you get this really nice sharp animation. The next thing I need to do is just look at the opacity. So this is a little bit tricky. I might have mentioned this, I'm not too sure, but on the actual group itself, I can't play with opacity. It's not going to let me do that in the way that Sketch and XD do. Instead, what I need to do is grab all of these layers, these three available ones, hit the T key and apply the same markers to each of them. So I'm just going to jump back to the beginning of that animation, strike up a keyframe, move forward, maybe just a little bit, not too far, and I'm going to hit another keyframe there. Jump back to my first and zero that out. Nice, okay, I want that a little bit more on the move, so I'm just going to select those and drag them forward a little bit. That's absolutely perfect. And then the back ones too. That looks great. So if I just run through this entire sequence where we're at the moment. Perfect. You can see it's rendering a little bit slow because it's trying to do it all on the fly. There's a lot of animations there. Let's run it again. That's great. As you can see, the available one is running a little bit slow, but I'll cover that back at the end of the video. So what I'm going to do now is just manage my cards. It's the final thing that's available on screen from the beginning. I don't really want it there. I also want that to appear, to rise up. So I'm going to apply some of the same concepts to that I have to the available, the available ticker in the right hand side. So I'm just going to, first of all, begin with positioning my profile group. So I'll maybe come to about here. I'm going to strike up a keyframe, scrub that forward, strike up another one, back to my first, and pull that Y value down. Awesome. Again, I'll select both of them. Keyframe assistant, 80/80 on my influence, and that pops up really nicely. The final thing to do is obviously the transparency, so I'm just going to select both of these. Hit T for opacity, scrub that forward, I'll maybe go about here, another keyframe, back to my beginning one, and zero that out too. And that's all there is to it. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll be back again soon with another design tutorial.